So I'm Larisa Sembaliuk Cheladyn, and I grew up in a very Ukrainian background, with very close to my babas and my dedos, and was really inspired just to draw because my dad is a graphic artist, and he would do some of his work at home as well as for the provincial government, and things like crayons and pencils and paint were always around. And I was always inspired by what was around me. So flowers, not so much people, but story, like legends and stories I would illustrate. I studied then at the University of Alberta. I have a degree in fine arts in art and design. And after I graduated, I started to illustrate books. And I worked primarily in watercolors, which I did for years and years and years. A big part of my inspiration was folklore. So stories behind the meaning of flowers. I've done lots of flowers. Make, I think, is my specialty. But also some of the things that identify us as Ukrainian Canadians, like Ukrainian dance. I've done a lot of paintings that are Ukrainian dance, and they're all been in watercolors. And then one day I started to think about, well, when the pioneers first came to Canada, what did they use if they wanted to draw or express themselves visually? And you could maybe buy something from the Eaton's catalog and order it. I talked to Peter Shostak, who is another well-known Ukrainian Canadian artist, and Peter said when he was little, he ordered from the Eaton's catalog, but it didn't show up till Christmas. And when it did show up, there was no paper in the house. You couldn't just go to a printer and pull out a sheet of paper and color. There was butcher's paper, which is sort of wax coated. He had to wait to use his new paints until he went back to school after Christmas, and a teacher gave him 3 pieces of paper. It was really rare. And I thought, okay, what about other people? And then I thought about all the women who started to embroider. And to make a long story short, that became a master's thesis. I wanted to do my master's in Ukrainian folklore, and that became the subject of my master's thesis, how Ukrainian Canadian embroidery, and then I narrowed it down to podushki. Well, one of the things I found that was really common in Ukrainian households, in Ukraine or here in Canada, is sort of the trifecta. There you've got pesenke, that are very popular, rushnike, and then there's the podushki. And I could find lots of information about the first two, pesenke and rushnike, quite a bit of research done both in Canada and Ukraine, actually around the world. But podushki I could find very, very little. And I thought, okay, that's a perfect thing to sort of focus in on. The other thing is that I had a gut feeling that they were very much inspired creatively, more so than regionally. Like the rushnike have a really set designs for certain ceremonies, certain rituals, certain regions of Ukraine. But the podushki, I thought, there might be something special about them. So that's kind of where it all narrowed down to. And when I started my research across Canada, I actually did a reverse migration. I took the train from Edmonton all the way back to Halifax, to Pier 21, or Pier 2 is where the settlers first came. And I wondered if the podushki were different amongst the immigrants across Canada, or if they were the same, and also what kind of patterns. So it just grew from there. I had some set questions that I asked them. I wanted to know, most of the people had either passed away or were very old. And one of my questions was, where did you get the pattern? And another one was the materials. Where did you get the materials? And sort of all the kinds of things you would ask an artist. What inspired you? Where'd you get that inspiration from for that pillow? Where did you get your materials? And I thought of each of those people as being artists, as opposed to just someone who's doing it to kill time or because they were patriotic and had to have something Ukrainian. And I found that most of the people, that's how they felt. It was something to do creatively. The main takeaway that I want people to come away with from this particular exhibit is to be inspired to create, and to be inspired by all the artisans of the past who experimented, tried different color combinations, used it as a form of meditation. There are quite a few women who said that I just do it at night to calm myself down. There's something very calming about the actual process of embroidery. And also to think about where these have been, what kind of life they've had, and do we really want to keep them in shelves, hidden away, or at Value Village, or do we want to start putting them out again, just like we've started to wear our Vyshyvanki again? Is this something that we can consider putting out in our homes? Yeah, that's, I think, the major takeaway that I think about.